Right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for attending this evening's meeting. I've just got a few housekeeping announcements, as you know, we usually do. So I'm Councillor Ian Wingfield, the chair of the committee. There are no planned fire alarm tests this evening. So if you hear the fire alarm, please leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is St John's Churchyard off Druid Street, and the council security staff will be available to direct you. The public toilets are located off the main reception area. Please switch your mobile phone to silent whilst in the meeting. The meeting is being live streamed to the Southwark Council YouTube channel. Recording the meeting will also be viewable on YouTube once the meeting has concluded. May I remind members to raise your hand if you wish to speak, and please wait until I've given you permission before contributing. Furthermore, when the chair speaks, other members should stop speaking and not interrupt the chair. Members can ask questions on the issue under discussion. Members can move recommendations, obviously, on the issue under discussion. Members of the public are welcome to record, screenshot, or tweet the public proceedings. And a copy of the council's protocol for reporting and filming is available on the Southwark website. That's out of the way. I can go on with the main agenda. So the first item I have is apologies. I have received apologies for absence from Councillor Von Wiese, Councillor Abacha, Councillor Leeming, Councillor Newins, and Jonathan Clay, the cooperative member for education. Good evening, Councillor Seaton. We also have substituting for a number of those members, Councillor Rachel Bentley, welcome, and Councillor Sabina Emanuel, welcome, and Councillor Richard Livingston, welcome. I don't think there's any other apologies for absence unless we've had any other education apologies. No? Just the one. Very much. Okay, so just as our usual practice, we'll confirm the voting members of the committee. So I'll go around and invite you to introduce yourselves as voting members of the committee. So I've already introduced myself, so we'll start with Councillor Bentley, why not?
So I'm Councillor Rachel Bentley, subbing for the Vice Chair, who's not today, and I'm a voting member.
Very much. Councillor Brown.
Councillor Brown, South Bermondsey Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Chamberlain from Borough and Bankside Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Emanuel.
Good evening. My name is Sabina Emanuel, Peckham Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Sam Foster, Faraday Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Dover Johnson, Chaucer Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Livingston.
Councillor Richard Livingstone, Old Kent Road Ward.
Very much. Councillor Rose.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Councillor Catherine Rose. I am the local ward councillor for Dulwich Wood Ward.
You are indeed. Thank you. Just and finally, but by no means least, Councillor Seaton.
Councillor Martin Seaton, North Walworth Ward, and a voting member.
You are. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to notification of items of business, which the chair deems urgent. There's no additional late items. You should have all received, besides the main agenda, supplemental agenda number 1, which is the report Southwark 2030, and that's it. Item 3, disclosure. Sorry.
Question
Yes,
about
yes,
the
sure.
work plan did say tonight we'd be looking at Devon Mansions and
Yes.
Canada Estate.
Yes.
Are you able to provide an update about why that's not on the agenda as well?
Yes. I was hoping a housing officer would be here, but they're not, so question directly. It was brought to my attention by the director of housing that the interviews being carried out by Pellings on the council's behalf with the various TNRAs had been complete. And I'll just come back to that in a minute, but it was thought that rather than just go ahead with the internal report, it would be better that we consider both the internal report, getting a full picture, unless you've got the tenants either to support or say. So that was the logic for them not appearing this evening. Backdrop to that is both the cabinet member for housing and the director are concerned that Pellings haven't completed the report within the timescale that was agreed, and has led to this day. And I don't know if they've done it already, but they said they were going to write a fairly strongly worded letter to them, and it might impact on the contractual fee that we agreed with them. But I'm privy to that detail, but that's. So yes, it's extremely unfortunate, and I know there's a lot of interest around this table from. And it would be good to have that done and dusted before the council, but I don't think it would be fair to proceed just with the interim.
And thank you for that. And do we have any idea about when? I appreciate there is some internal work to be done with Pelling, but do we have any idea about timescales about when we might be able to see that as
I think they're hoping certainly to have it all completed before the summer recess. So whether that's June or July, it'll certainly be timetable for. Thank you. So where was I? Yes, disclosure of interest and dispensations. Are there any disclosures of any interest at all on the items? No, thank you very much. Item 4, the minutes. Can we approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of March? Agreed? Very much. Now let's move on to item 5, which is delivering Southwark 2030. As I say, the report's contained in supplemental agenda 1. And I invite the Assistant Chief Executive of Strategy and Communities to come forward so that you can make a presentation on this item, and then we'll take questions from members. And before we kick off, can you just introduce yourselves and your titles, and we can go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I am Rona Cadenhead. I'm the Assistant Chief Executive, Strategy and Community.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Mashumi Badr, Assistant Director, Strategy and Co-Design and Strategy.
Thank you. Would you like to start the presentation?
Well, thank you. So, as you know, the Council approved the 2030 strategy at Assembly in November 2024, and then agreed a subsequent first-year delivery plan in February of this year. So what you have in front of you is an update on 2 things: the progress that we will make in ensuring that delivery plan is appropriately delivered as promised, and also on how the council will measure and monitor its progress towards that, and then a little bit about how we will seek to ensure that the work towards 2030 itself, in that broader sense beyond the first year of the delivery plan, is as good as it possibly can be to get the best outcome for our residents. And so we're a bit of a crossover between the old delivery plan and the new delivery plan. So we have we've finished Q3 reporting on the old delivery plan, or in the process of wrapping up end of year reporting on the old delivery plan. That is extremely important. We don't want to just abandon that on the basis of a new delivery plan. We want to make sure that at the end of that reporting period, we have a really clear understanding of where we've gotten to with the old delivery plan, and that sets it up as well as possible for the new plan. At the same time as finalising that reporting, we also are working concertedly across the council to look at what the measures and milestones are for the first year's delivery plan, and to ensure that there is robustness in that scrutiny and oversight and performance management, but also that we can be very clear about what can be expected to be delivered within that time period and towards 2030. The new delivery plan, as as you've already seen. It's very clear what that is. A lot of that is wrapping up the final parts of the delivery plan that was agreed in 2022, as everyone would expect. So the delivery plan that the council agreed in 2022 was absolutely on the basis of the administration's priorities at that time. It's absolutely right that we finalised that we're clear about the how we're going to progress it and the outstanding pieces of work that need to be completed. So we have a full 4 years record, but we also want to make sure that we are properly putting in place the strategic enablers, if you will, to ensure that we're working towards that far longer period and working with partners to ensure that we can, as 2030 is a promise of a whole place delivery plan and a partnership delivery plan, and we want to take the next year, as well as finalising the completion of the first year's delivery plan, to do the work with partners to ensure that we're working as a partnership across Southwark for the benefit of everyone who lives here. So the work that we're doing, and Mashimi's here and is very much in the detail of that work. The work that we're doing is about developing those measures and milestones. So on a page you can see what each of the commitments should be delivering in the next year, but also developing a new approach to corporate performance reporting. So at the moment we're working with the Chief Executive on a Chief Executive's performance dashboard, which is very much about strategic oversight of council performance and delivery that aligns to that delivery plan and ensures that we can say not just that we're delivering the individual pieces, the individual commitments, but that also that is matched against service performance and that we have proof and evidence of that delivery. We'll develop over the next few months an outcomes framework which sets out the socioeconomic commitments that we would expect to track. Now that will not be a numbers basis. That won't be we're going to take child poverty down by a certain amount. Those are promises that we couldn't possibly make at this point. What that will be is an outcomes tracker of the socioeconomic outcomes we expect to see linked to the priorities that are within the delivery plan and 2030 strategy. Obviously, we once we've finalised that process, we have our measures and milestones, we have our Chief Executive's performance dashboard, we have an outline outcomes framework. There is a particularly significant role for this committee, and we want to come back and talk about how you would like to begin to receive that reporting and ensure that you can provide that oversight both in this committee but also in the wider scrutiny committees and in the greater depth that you would expect to see in digging into the different department delivery areas. And we've given in the report some of the flavour of the progress made towards the delivery of the old council delivery plan. Obviously can answer some questions around that, and we can dig deeper with any queries that you have and get you some responses directly from the departments. I think it's important to say that all of the delivery that we are monitoring goes through a very rigorous process internally in the council, goes to the council CMT, goes to portfolio lead member briefings, and does go through some rigorous internal scrutiny before being reported. And there's all sorts of evidence base that sits behind that. So that's a general oversight of what you have in front of you. I think definitely in the next year, the focus is on ensuring the delivery of that first year council delivery plan and some real robust reporting and performance management of it, and then laying the greater strategic framework that will enable us to get to the outcomes in the 2030 strategy through performance, through a greater understanding of how we can really deliver through the principles that are set out within the 2030 strategy. And also how we can stress test some of that, including through the work of the committee today.
Did you want to add anything?
Just one point that I wanted to add was that the delivery plan itself is constructed against the 6 goals of the 2030 strategy in recognition of its reflection of our residents' priorities and aspirations for what they want the borough to be like and feel like as we work towards 2030, but it does also include an internal facing council goal on our ambitions to ensure that we are working as a well-run council and we're maximising every pound that we spend within the council to leverage maximum benefit for our community.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think if I may, I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head in the sense that this is setting policy framework for the council over the next 4 years. So it is an extremely important piece of work. And obviously, as we move into the year following the council elections, and it will impact on the budget that we set, and presumably we might set another 3-year budget. So, you know, there's that longer term implication based on the themes within this delivery plan. So it's extremely important that OS plays a key role in that process, not just a one-off, but as we roll out over the years. So yes, so I would expect to see the delivery plan and the themes cropping up on our agenda quite frequently. I just wanted just one specific question. When you talked about the old delivery plan and analysing all the data from the final quarter, etc. So when do you envisage a particular time when that will all be complete?
The intention is to do an annual report that I would expect to be available, obviously to the committee, and that will go to July cabinet.
Thank you. It's just to give us an idea, because obviously we need to factor that in for the coming year. So I'll throw it open to members. I'll let one of the newer members start first. So Councillor Livingston.
Very new, Chair. So I wanted to ask about, in particular, how this document and delivery targets align with other strategies of the council. So I'm thinking in particular about the 2030 goals that the council has on climate change and the steps that need to happen there. So how this document sits alongside that, and the process of making sure that those two key policies and strategies council align.
Yeah, absolutely. So the delivery plan for the next year was done in partnership with all of the departments of the council, and as much as possible we endeavoured to do it in a way so that it was cross-cutting. So when we were doing the goal-based workshops, we were making sure we had breadths of colleagues from across the council, not just housing colleagues feeding into the commitments that would sit under the Decent Homes for All goal, but really taking a cross-council view of how we would work as one organisation to deliver commitments towards these goals. Where possible, these are commitments that are lifted or aligned to service plans that are being delivered within departments. Where there are commitments where there is due to be a refresh of a strategy or an action plan, that is the commitment within the delivery plan. So I think for the climate strategy, there is an ambition to reframe the climate strategy and the action plan that underpins it to align with what we heard in the 2030 resident engagement and the priorities for 2030. So it works both ways in a sense. We did the co-development in partnership with departments, and departments are looking to align how they will deliver against 2030 over the next year as part of the delivery plan.
And just sorry, Richard, as we heard before, when you were here before, it's all wrapped up with the transformation agenda and the digitisation of services, which you don't have to repeat again. So our second new member, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you very much. So my question was more, I think you referred to them as partners, and I think, I've thought of it as an anchor network. And my question when I was reading the report was I couldn't really see the tracking of or performance of their progress versus, say, the council's progress, and just how that's going to be captured and presented, because my understanding is that the goal of this is to kind of harmonise and to build on the kind of strength of those partners working together, and just how that really plays out and is captured properly.
So the ambition is to have a shared action plan that we work towards with partners. The ambition is to do that in as sensible and pragmatic a way as possible. So not to include the work of all partners. There are huge institutions in Southwark absolutely doing all sorts of things that work towards the goals of 2030, but we have an ambition that we do a shared action plan that perhaps has two key pieces of work that we will do in partnership and in concert together to enable the best use of resources, the best concentration of efforts, and to ensure that we can reasonably take account of it and be accountable for the actions that we create. So it's absolutely, the ambition is absolutely not to include all of the delivery plans of each of the partners across Southwark, because we don't think that would be fruitful and we don't think that would be the best use of resources. But it's instead to think where we can best combine resources and actions and service provision to deliver the goals of 2030. So that will be the work of the coming year.
But so where we're looking in the report at some of the numbers in there, and I'm thinking, for example, around internships or those kind of things, which are quite measurable, are the numbers that are in here right now, are they for the council alone or are they for the partners as well?
So they would be the provision through the services in the council at the moment. It may be that we provide interns to different organisations, but they would be the ones facilitated through the work of the council and the services that the council provides.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point because it's that joined up working, isn't it? We don't want our partners to be working, on totally different aims, compared to what ours are. We need to do, well, to achieve them, we need to be working together and similar aims. So, yes, that's a very valid point. Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Chair. Got a broad overarching question, picking up from the points previously raised about partnerships, but more macro than that. I just wanted to know and understand your sense around the ability of this framework to be agile enough to respond to changes in the national landscape for our sector. So around adult social care, education and schools, and housing legislation or reform through devolution in London in terms of borough working and evolving of resources or a different or amended model of what currently exists at the moment. So I just wanted to sort of understand your sense on that, and out of those, or perhaps it's not something I've already mentioned, where you think the greater challenges might lie in terms of the probability of something changing fundamentally, and or the impact it would have on us in terms of what you're trying to deliver if that policy area or service area was reformed significantly or changed. And then some finally then some specifics on goal 6 around the environment and that combination of both statutory and discretionary services. And I think that's an area of policy which is a really good example, because one of the things I constantly mention is that essentially parks is a discretionary service and green spaces, and it runs alongside environmental commitments that are clearly are statutory and guided by quite stringent legislation, albeit they may be reformed. So how that combination, because obviously to residents it's seamless, isn't it? They don't make the distinction between what's statutory and what's discretionary. They just want things to improve and facilities and the means there. So your understanding on that. And then finally on the well-run council, again, touching on some of the discussions we had as part of the budget setting process this year, a lot of this will be dependent on the centre. And there was a discussion, and my colleague Councillor Foster had raised the call centre being funded through contingency work, and that wasn't in the base budget this year. And yet there is a significant amount of budgetary that's dependent on a £5 million transformation budget. So how does the requirement to save £5 million through transformation sit with goal 7 and trying to invest and change and deliver a well-run council? Those are my 3 areas. Thanks.
If I perhaps take the first and third areas, and Michelle will come in and should take the second part and probably adds greater clarity than I might. So I think around the flexibility point, in the council delivery plan, we've made specific reference to the need to work with local partners, national partners, to flex and be ready to respond to the government changes, mayoral changes, socioeconomic disruption, all of those things that we might all expect at the moment. I think there are significant parts of it that already relate to parts of the government's announced agenda. So the Renters Reform Bill, absolutely aligns with our wish that everyone lives in a good home, and there are other areas in which the council is tracking very carefully the changes that are happening, as you might expect. So, corporate management team 2 weeks ago received a report and an update on the changes that are being made in children's social care. That will come regularly. It will be tracked. Obviously, David Cork-Thornton and his team are all over that and ensuring that that adaptation doesn't need to be changed within a plan, but actually is happening on a day-to-day basis, and that we're making sure that the council is providing the best services it can. I think partly that is we've set a course, and it's absolutely right that we pursue that course with as much vigour and concentration as possible. However, I think everyone accepts that we're in a point of disruption, and we need to monitor those processes, and we need to monitor changes on a national and international basis. That is happening through the normal working of the council, and I think the goals as set out can be absolutely adapted depending on what happens with, I want to say legislative changes, I want to say the world at the moment, and really anything that's happening. And I think it's more the way that the council operates that's set up to be adaptable in that way, and the plan can therefore flex around it. So it's all being monitored closely. We also have things like, so the Chief Executive is on a national panel around prevention, and we'll make sure that, again, that link through is there. The Strategic Director of Resources is sitting on the government's working group around the changes to the formula. So Southwark is very well connected into all of that, is receiving regular updates and monitoring and flexibility about the way that we're doing things. And I think, I know Alfie was here last month, as she would say, disruption is a part of life now, and we need to be adaptable and changeable to it. So I don't think we can predict it, but we're sort of ready for it and tracking it. And Southwark is very well connected into national agendas, where there might be change happening. In terms of the transformation, so absolutely, that the well-run council has to be based on a financially stable council, as the chair introduced, and the importance of the link to the budget. So lots of the pressures that we're seeing, for instance, in areas like the call centre, again, are being very actively managed, monitored, and there's oversight there, and change happening. A lot of the areas in which we can really make a difference in the transformation plan are absolutely around how the council spends its third-party spend. So a real focus on procurement is a fundamental part of that transformation plan and of the savings plan that are coming up. We also hope that would have the least impact on service provision. The best deal that we can do and the best buying that we can have is absolutely fundamental to that. But there are absolutely areas of pressures, and there are areas of performance pressures, and they're again being managed and monitored, and some significant oversight being put in place across the council.
I'm happy to pick up the point about how within the delivery plan we've both captured discretionary services that we deliver for residents, as well as fulfilling and enhancing our statutory obligations as well. I mean, I think that's true of Goal 6, but probably true of everything we're doing across the goal areas. And I think, especially given the financial landscape for local government, that we should definitely be, in my view, celebrating and speaking about the things that we're doing, where we're demonstrating how we're still continuing to offer fantastic discretionary services for residents across parks, across libraries, and the things that we're doing that are speaking to the principles of Southwark 2030. Really, I think it's in those discretionary services that we have the best levers to reduce inequality, to be more preventative in our work, and to be more participatory and empowering to our residents. So I think it's right that they form part and parcel of how we talk about our integrated offer to residents across the delivery plan. I think that's something that we should be celebrating, and leave it to colleagues to make sure that we're getting the balance right in how we're describing those offers, in how we talk about the delivery plan and how we work towards delivery. But yes, it's quite critical to make sure we're capturing that activity and celebrating what we're doing in sort of pursuit of our ambition around the vision of 2030.
You cover all your points? Yeah. Okay, just checking. Councillor Seaton next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try and keep my question simple, he says. Look, it has been asked already. I just want to focus on the commitment in relation to, just get it up on my screen again, Goal 5, staying well, which obviously requires us to work closely with the NHS, an interesting organisation. I know you may have some challenges working with them. Just a question in that case. You focus here on maternity, mental health. I don't see here obesity being a key lever determining general health and well-being. How closely are you working with the NHS? Is there a true alignment with the 2030 goals and their goals? And are there any tensions? Are there resource implications that we'd like to bring to our attention?
So I think probably the first thing to say is that we work really closely with public health colleagues and integrated health and care colleagues to make sure that the strategic plans that oversee how we work in this area align with the priorities within the integrated health and care plan and the health and wellbeing strategy for the borough, which I think was agreed at Cabinet earlier this year. So we worked in really close partnership to make sure that the action areas that we describe in the action plan relate to the strategic outcomes we want to achieve through our health and wellbeing strategy, which is really focused on the wider determinants of health and how we can improve health outcomes for people across areas of growing need, including people living with long-term health conditions and disabilities, people suffering from poor mental health, but also how we're tackling obesity equitably across all of our communities. So perhaps the details not necessarily in here at kind of high level, but we work really closely with colleagues, both within the council who have those then extended partnerships with health colleagues to ensure there's good strategic alignment between our delivery plans.
Right.
So I would just add briefly, the delivery plan is really important priorities. It's not the totality of everything that the council is doing. There's a huge focus on obesity within the public health teams, and one of the 5 ways to well-being is very much focused on that. And the council also has a joint post with health in the Strategic Director of Integrated Care, and again that's really closely aligning the work with health. Lots of changes going on in health at the moment, and that is very actively being managed across the council and in partnership.
Yeah, I mean, I think Councillor Seaton raises an important point. I mean, the plan is one of its key principles is reducing inequalities, and because we know there's very serious inequalities in terms of health that impacts on general inequalities. So, I do think that has to be an important aspect of the plan as we move forward. So, perhaps you might want to take note of that. I've got Councillor Chamberlain next.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for the report. I tried to read it and also to listen to you today as a resident, from the resident's perspective. And I have to say, I found it quite difficult to follow. And that might be because the strategic goals are so broad. They are motherhood and apple pie, aren't they? Any council could say these 6 strategic goals. But particularly given that they were supposed to be driven by residents, I do think it's really important that they are then easily understood and measurable for residents. So that they can see traction and how things are changing, but also that they can have that accountability. And the current council plan says that we're on 90% on target, but we know that can't possibly be true. Things like council house starts that were 0 last year in Southwark. Council house voids are on the rise. Perception and reality of crime is going up. We know that people are feeling the pinch and the cost of living even more than ever. And actually, these are the tangibles that residents will be telling us as councillors on the doorstep. So they're the sort of perceptions of the targets that they're going to want to be able to measure. Will there be some measurable targets in what the work that you're doing around things like the amount of voids and the amount of time it takes to turn them around? Will there be tracks about crime and how perception of crime is going, so that actually normal people, not officers or councillors, can actually follow this progress too? And how will we continue to engage residents throughout the process to make sure that there is that continual buy-in, not just at the start of the 2030 strategy, but throughout the next 5 years?
Thank you for that. I think they're fair comments that sometimes the things we produce aren't as easily discernible in the public arena. So three things. The council has made huge progress in the delivery of its delivery plan. There is evidence of progress across the boards and of better delivery and better outcomes for residents. However, no one would pretend that there aren't challenges still remaining. So housing is a well-established challenge. If Althea was able to make it tonight, she would say that is on her radar every single day, and becoming a better landlord to our tenants, a better oversight of our leaseholder provision, and all of those things is absolutely the council's number one priority. And I don't think anyone would represent the council's position as being where we would want it to be, or in matching our tenants and leaseholders' expectations. So no attempt in any way to say that we haven't got significant challenges coming along. Again, if Althea were here, she would say that one of the priorities is absolutely community safety. So we know we're an outlier in terms of how concerned our residents are, especially in perceptions of safety after dark. So again, significant action going on across the council to begin to address that. Community safety review coming to an end. Again, that will report to Cabinet before summer. Let me double check that, but I think that's going to come by July, and that again is a significant area where we need to show residents that we're on their side and taking action, and that there are tangible outcomes and improvements on their concerns and areas. And going back to Councillor Rose's point earlier, and of course I should have said when you talked about disruption, absolutely changes to the NHS are a significant part of that disruption that we'll have to deal with. But again, going back to Councillor Rose's point earlier, customer experience, so again, Chief Executive were here, she would say that our residents' experience of the council is not all that it could be 100% of the time, and the aim is that residents do have a good experience of the council, and that they can access the services they need in the way that they need to access them, and in a way that provides the services they need at the time of asking. And again, there's a customer experience strategy being done to address some of those points. So there is a significant work going on to address the problems that we have, and there is an absolute acknowledgement across the council that we need to improve in different areas. I agree that we need to find better ways to describe that to our residents and to our tenants in particular. And again, part of the annual report will be a far plainer language way to show that, but also to talk honestly about some of our challenges. And there have been significant commitments made around the reporting of housing performance, and that going directly through tenants and leaseholders' doors, and about that being an absolute honest appraisal of where we're up to in the direction of travel. So totally accept your points, and we sort of represent the significant work going on across the council to address them.
No, I think that's the extremely important point that the Councillor Chamberlain raises, because you need effective monitoring of the delivery plan, and as I said before, it's setting the whole policy framework for the council, and there should be smart targets so that everybody can see and it's easy to demonstrate. You don't have to be inside Tooley Street to appreciate and understand what's going on. And as Councillor Chamberlain says, it's important we take our residents with us every step of the way. So there has to be that continued dialogue and involvement in the rollout of the delivery plan, because we all know things don't go smoothly as anticipated. So it's important we've got that sort of frontline involvement. And finally, I think there will come a point where we will be able to demonstrate in this particular street, in this park, in this ward, various things have happened as a consequence of yes, this is general. I fully accept that, but that we will hopefully get to that point where we will be able to
activities as
Sorry. Yeah, sure.
And I agree, Chair. I think, I think that feedback loop is so important to get the buy-in and actual real traction in the long term. And I think absolutely we should celebrate where we're making progress, and be open and honest about and being transparent when things aren't going as well, because I think that's also how you get the buy-in and trust of the council. But if things are evolving in a different way, and I think it picks up Councillor Rose's point as well about even if the policy environment that we're working in, it changes over the next few years. Is the plan flexible enough to be able to adapt to that? Or people, residents are telling us that we need to change it.
Yeah. So sorry, I didn't address the point about the constant engagement. That's entirely right. So we are looking at so one of the principles in 2030 is empowering people and ensuring that they do have those constant feed-in and feedback loops that we can ensure that we're meeting needs and we're understanding what's actually going on in the community, not just we've set out a plan and we're going to carry on and we're going to do that. So later in the year we will be thinking about we will begin to develop a new engagement programme. There is very deep and rich engagement that goes on across the council, and it does impact on decision making. We think we need to develop that further in relating to into the 2030 strategy about fulfilling that that commitment to empower people, but also to ensure that we're course correcting where that needs to happen. And I think so a good example of that and of the starting process of that, but we're in very early days of it, is that we started a residents' insight survey, and actually that gave us a lot of rich information about how people do feel about safety, and gave us the information to understand that we are a bit of an outlier in terms of how people feel safe in the borough after dark. And again, that has led to significant action around the review of community safety and really rethinking what the council does and whether it's meeting the needs of residents or not. So again, early days of that new process, but it's having an impact already on the work that we're doing. And again, you will have, I'm sure, deeper conversations about the customer experience strategy, but that is being developed on the basis of really widespread feed-in from residents on a grand scale, and also on a detailed scale around research and focus groups and really understanding what's happening for customers. So much more to do in that area, and I think we need to develop that further. But that is absolutely core to the way that the 2030 strategy will develop.
I've got Councillor Manuel first.
Part of my what I was going to say was taken up by a colleague on the other side. You said you've launched the £2 million in antisocial behaviour. Is how long will that program be? Because things are getting a bit out of hand at the moment, so we will need quite a lot for that. And prevention, we also need the prevention element of it, and we also need strategies to, if I move this here, it wouldn't go over there, or it would move over to the other side, and when you're on the other side, it moves over to the other side. I'm trying to speak in code so you understand what I'm saying. If you don't, ask me and I'll tell you. So how are we going to manage that? Because it's a great concern to me, how we manage that antisocial behavior, because it impacts on people not wanting, the elderly being frightened to go out. And, it's like sometimes it's happening outside the front door and they cannot move. And what procedures do you put in so that they can be able to report to your team without the perpetrators thinking that they are the ones who did it?
So I think obviously the Director of Community Safety will give a much better answer than I'm about to give you. So the £2 million commitment was an ongoing investment in additional wardens. So the broadening out of the wardens programme, and that that commitment has been put in place, I think, for the last 2 years. I will correct myself if I'm wrong, and I'll come back. I will double check that that is the case. And that was a significant commitment that the council made into community safety in recognition of all of the issues that people experience that you have that you've outlined. I think in understanding that. The position, especially on perception of crime and whether people feel safe, is worsening, as Councillor Chamberlain addressed. That's part of the council's community safety review. So the council puts significant resources into community safety. Part of that review is, are we getting the best bang for our buck? Are there different strategies, different approaches, best practice from elsewhere, or different ways in which we can work with the police that might mean a better outcome for residents and a better use of council resources? So that work is going on, and it's going on in earnest, and with an appreciation that we may have to transform the way we work, or the way that we work with our partners in the police force. So lots of work going on in the community safety space at the moment, and I imagine that will come to subsequent meetings of this committee later in the year.
I just correct you on one thing. The community wardens were there since the 90s, and they stopped them, and they brought them back 2 years ago. So it was originally Southwark's idea, and then all the other boroughs took it on. So I just thought I'd like to.
Thanks for doing that. Thank you.
Just like free school meals. We have all the best ideas here first. So I've got Councillor Bentley.
So I think it's following on a little bit from what Councillor Chamberlain was saying, that we are obviously all councillors, but we're also all residents of the borough. And I was struck on page, I guess it's page 34 of the report, about this good rates of resident satisfaction. 71% of residents are satisfied with the council, and 72% say they trust the council. Now, we're probably a little biased in that often the issues that come into our email boxes are when people aren't feeling happy. But I was curious as to how you got those numbers and how representative they are. Are they from something like a focus group, or are they from hitting a smiley face on the bottom of an email or something?
So this is an externally commissioned residents' insight survey. So might be one of the things that Southwark did some time ago, but actually Southwark was one of the few councils across London that didn't do a residents' insight survey. So this is an 800 people questionnaire that is representative down to ward level of all of the major characteristics you would expect. So age, ethnicity, socioeconomic class, tenure, all of those things. So it's a statistically representative poll carried out by a very professional polling company and completely independent of the council. So it's what you might expect, for instance, a Mori poll to be, and it's absolutely to that standard of delivery. So we're very, very confident of the professionalism of that approach, and as I say, completely not linked to the council at all. The satisfaction levels are very high, and again, we feel very confident about that in terms of the numbers, in terms of those outcomes. That, of course, hides some different experiences within it, and those are the areas that we really want to improve upon. So, we know, for instance, that tenants are less likely to be satisfied. That absolutely tracks through to reported performance. It absolutely tracks through to the engagement that we do and the feedback that we get from our tenants. And again, that's, there's no assumptions made on the basis of those high levels of satisfaction. We understand that they mask some differences within different groups and some different experiences with the council, and they are absolutely part of the action plan to address. But that is a very high quality piece of research work that the council commissioned.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've got hold on, don't know right. I'm going to take Councillor Johnson because she's not spoken.
Thank you, Chair. No, it was just in regards to the survey you mentioned of 800 people, but the language you used was a bit intimate. These residents and tenants. So was it 800 tenants as in Southwark tenants, or was it 800 residents as in people that live in Southwark? Because obviously 800 tenants is a bit more proportional than 800 residents, which we have 300,000 of them. So it's a question.
Sorry, sorry. So it's 800 residents, but within that, it was proportionate to a number of tenants as part of the population. And so within the satisfaction levels, satisfactions across all groups, all tenures, where it was high, but perhaps people in council tenancies had a slightly less level of satisfaction. Sorry for mixing that up. Sorry.
Nobody likes a landlord. Councillor Livingston first.
Thank you. Yes, I want to return to setting performance indicators, the measures and milestones that you talked about. And there's obviously a lot of commitments here, 115. So that's a lot of measures. And looking at some of these, some of them, my guess is, don't really lend themselves to a single measure. So to pick one up, given that Councillor Chamberlain raised it earlier, the one about empty homes, there's parts there the council can directly deliver in terms of void properties, where you're looking at homes that are either housing association or in the private sector. They're things that we can influence, but we can't directly deliver ourselves. So you probably need measures that look at both of those things. So just to really understand that a little bit more, do you have multiple targets in those areas? And how do you decide what's the right measure?
Thank you. Yeah, we're working, as mentioned before, hand in hand with colleagues in departments who will be responsible for progressing delivery against these commitments. And we're trying to do two things within that. One is to capture kind of a strategic overview of the work that is in train to support delivery of these commitments. So I think it's important, some of these, that there's a really robust offer of support that we're delivering behind many of these commitments. So we want to be, telling a clear story of what activity is being delivered, but then also capturing the best measures that help us to understand what it is that the council will measure its own success by in direct delivery of work, but also how we would then work with partners or use our regulatory powers to then measure success in extending the impact beyond what's within the direct control of the council. And as much as possible, we want those measures to not just be measures that measure activity, so counting things, but measures that would help us to know something meaningful about the impact of that delivery in terms of, working towards that vision. So not just numbers of service users accessing an offer, but perhaps satisfaction with that offer. Is it then, if it's our employment support offer, how is that then leading to a job interview or securing employment within X months of offer of support to try and move us beyond counting things that don't actually show as if we're shifting the dial on meeting ambitions for residents.
Okay, I've got Councillor Manuel first.
I was thinking on the lines of my colleague Laura, the call center. You say you're going to improve it. I think you need to work very hard on it because it hasn't given the service that it's meant to give. And a lot of elderly people, I talk for the elderly people because the young people can speak for themselves. They have a lot of problems getting through, especially when they get anxious that something has gone wrong in the flat and they want everything perfect, or they have certain illnesses that will get them frustrated. And they're telling me they have to wait long before somebody answers them. I think you need to improve on that service or prioritize different people, use it for different types of callers, because one caller for everyone isn't doing it. You need more people, and you need people who would calm people down. So I suggest you look at the employment strategies that is going to employ people to use a call center that is strategic to the council and to the tenants and residents.
So as I say, I think there's recognition that not all residents are having the experience we would want them to have at the council, and that is absolutely why the Director of Resources is leading a new customer experience strategy that will come just before the summer, because there is clear recognition that sometimes residents' experience of us when they're operating as a customer isn't good enough, and we want to improve that significantly.
Okay, I've got Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reflect on the document and the outward-facing sort of narrative that it conveys, I was sort of struck as the conversation has gone on that the two key cohorts that aren't explicitly talked about but should be in some way are our own staff in relation to their current skill set and what will be required in order to achieve 2030 where we get to. And so from an organisational corporate development piece, what are you doing with our body of staff and the people that work directly for us and alongside us over and above procurement? And then the other key cohort with vested interest is the elected members and representatives. And again, whether it's a complementary document, but quite rightly, this talks about residents and what we're trying to do. But I just wondered whether there was time and space set aside for supporting current and potential new elected members between now and 2030, given the complexities of the role, given the challenges that we've all been facing. And I can't see the role of elected members and the support that the council will offer to provide to be to enable councillors to do what they're elected to do and represent the community, and as an organisation, support and infrastructure to allow us to do that going forward. So I just would like to know where that will be and where it might sit, and given the natural cycle of the electoral process, wanting to know if the experience of current and new members from 26 to 2030 will be significantly improved and different and supported, given the learning and experience of not least the previous 4 years and maybe since 2019 in particular, given the challenges that we've all faced since then. That's my final question.
So two things. On the staff side, we've really focused in the first instance in communicating the 2030 strategy and the new delivery plan on that will support it. So that has absolutely been the first phase. Part of that is so people really understand the goals, understand the commitments that have been made, and can link it back through their work in their own work plans, in their appraisal processes, and all those things. So that's absolutely been the first port of call and the first focus with staff. Later in the year, and I think it might just be after summer, there'll be a new people plan, which is absolutely about capabilities and skills and new ways of working and how we're going to support staff as an organisation to ensure that they can deliver they can be at their best for residents if we're skilling them up, we're making sure they've got good working conditions and they have the training and development that they need to be able to do that. So that is absolutely in train. First focus, however, has absolutely been understand the strategy, understand where we're going and the vision of the organisation and the commitments that we've made to residents to deliver against that. On the member side, that absolutely needs to happen. I'm not cited on it yet. I know that Doreen is working on a plan and we'll be talking to the whips, but I have to say I'm not cited on it, but I'll get an update for you to make sure that, because that's of fundamental importance, of course it is.
Okay. Are there any more questions? This report? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming along and thank you for answering the questions. And we look forward to seeing you more often in the future. Thanks again. Okay, so if we could move on to item 6, please, which is the Cabinet Scrutiny Protocol. And we're joined by our old friend. I didn't mean that in age terms. Everton Roberts, the head of Scrutiny, who will present the protocol to us.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, members. This report concerns the development of the Cabinet Scrutiny Protocol, which stems from the Council's Scrutiny Improvement Review and has regard to the comments and recommendations arising from that review which were agreed by the committee in October 2023. The committee was presented with this protocol at the February meeting, and subsequently members of the committee and members of cabinet were invited to submit comments on the protocol ahead of consideration by the council's chief officers in April this year. This version of the protocol is a final product of the exercise, and the committee is being asked to adopt the cabinet protocol as the agreed way of working. Protocol seeks to achieve greater collaboration between cabinet members, senior officers, and the scrutiny function, and to make clearer the expectations and behaviours of members, cabinet and scrutiny members, and officers when engaging with the various aspects of the scrutiny function. It also seeks to achieve more dialogue between cabinet members and scrutiny on the council's key priorities to enable scrutiny to make informed decisions on the agreement and prioritisation of the scrutiny work programme, with greater alignment of the work of scrutiny with the council's key priorities, and also identification of matters of pre-decision scrutiny and policy development. It also seeks for scrutiny to keep the leadership informed of its scrutiny activity and for greater input from officers using their expertise to enable better scoping of scrutiny reviews. I'm currently working with the head of the Cabinet Office and the head of the Chief Executive's Office to establish how this dialogue between Cabinet members, senior officers and scrutiny members take place. And the intention is to have this work through and undertaken ahead of the 23rd of June OSC meeting, which is when the committee will be agreeing the work programme for the coming year.
Thank you, Everton. And just to underline, most members will know this is one of the key recommendations that came out of the Scrutiny Improvement Review that we undertook years ago. And it's certainly overdue as far as I'm concerned, because it's the essence of our relationship with cabinet members. We need them to come before the committee. We don't just need to see them, as nice as it is to see them. We want to ensure that they're here to address the concerns of members and the topics that we're interested in, that we want to them directly, and therefore they need to be informed before they attend. Otherwise, it's like being thrown into the lion's den, literally, not knowing exactly what's going to be thrown at you. So, so it's the way that I see it. It's really the oils to the machinery that we have here in Southwark to make sure that everything functions correctly. But obviously, it's open to everybody to comment and raise questions. And we'll start with Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Everton. I think this is really good, and I particularly like the pre-decision scrutiny section. And as I was reading it, I was reflecting on some of the pre-scrutiny that we did on the education and local economy scrutiny commission this year around town centre action plans, and I thought it was really positive. But I wonder about whether the link between pre-scrutiny and cabinet taking recommendations is as strong as the report at the end of the year and cabinet taking on recommendations, because it really felt to me like not that much was really taken forward. And I worry that that's perhaps because this is relatively new in the process, and it's very well established that once the report from the commission goes to cabinet at the end of the year, it's a big hoo-ha. They really look deeply into it. And I worry that it feels slightly tick boxy at the moment. That's just my experience this year. And I don't know if you're the person to comment on that, but I think it's something for this commission to note, because after that section in the report here, it goes straight into recommendations from scrutiny, and I feel like there's a bit of a missing link between those. I think we really need to strengthen the link between pre-decision scrutiny and cabinet really taking on board those actions.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Councillor Brown. I mean, it is for this committee to decide whether or not they want to tweak the protocol. But what I would say is what this protocol seeks to achieve is to involve officers in more detail at greater level. So when you're looking at your scrutiny reviews, it's being done with the support of officers. It's being done in kind of consultation in terms of keeping members informed of of the work that the committee is undertaking, and therefore getting feedback earlier in the process about what you may be finding out from your scrutiny reviews, so that come the end of the year, everybody's been on board. If it's work which Cabinet have asked scrutiny to look at, then they've got a greater interest in the outcome, and I expect that there will be more, I don't know, discussion to iron out the issues which may be of contention. So come the end of the year, when you're making recommendations, they would have, in essence, been familiarised with Cabinet and senior officers, and that may involve you refining recommendations based on what they say. But I guess it's something that we have to try out and see how it works.
Thank you. And just to come back on that, I think one of the challenges, although I like it with pre-decision scrutiny, is, at least in the case we had on our commission over in education and local economy, is that when you're looking at something some time before the decision, it's not always very fleshed out. And I feel that's what we found with the town centre action plan piece. There wasn't a lot for us to look at either. So I think this also, to make this work, it also relies on Cabinet being much more prepared. If we want pre-decision scrutiny, then we need to have something of substance to scrutinise.
It's agreed. A section of the protocol talks about officers and members being prepared when they come to meetings. Another angle of the protocol is about us scrutiny making clear to officers and Cabinet members of what the ask is up front. A lot of the times, Cabinet members and officers will say, "Oh, we didn't quite understand what we was attending the meeting for." So with identifying the issues earlier, it allows us to have better discussions before scrutiny reviews start. It allows us to examine the parameters of which scrutiny is going to look at. There are different elements of pre-decision scrutiny. We've got scrutiny, pre-decision scrutiny, which is just before Cabinet members take a decision. So everything would have been worked up when they're seeking the views of the committee or a commission on particular issues. There's the policy development side, which is a bit of a grey area, because it's something which, in my experience, we've not really had as much practice on. So whilst you talk about scrutiny reviews that they're undertaking, there may not necessarily be part of policy development which Cabinet have asked scrutiny to get involved with, and therefore it's kind of being developed from a slightly different angle. Whereas what's most likely happened is scrutiny have decided we want to look at a particular issue, and therefore that's not really policy development. That's looking through at something which may be a bit of a problem, an identified problem. I know Cabinet members sometimes want to liaise with scrutiny about things they're developing, but I've been at meetings and witnessed, as you kind of pointed out, information which is so vague it's difficult for scrutiny to comment on. So again, by pre-preparation, we should be able to iron out some of those issues. And with greater dialogue, and what I'm looking to have in place is meetings between scrutiny chairs and Cabinet members, where some of these issues can be discussed and thrashed out, so that when the commission or the committee is looking at a particular issue, all parties are better informed as to what a particular position is.
Yeah, I mean, these are process issues at the end of the day. We're both involved, whether we're on the scrutiny side or the Cabinet side. So we've both got a shared interest in that the process is right. And you know, we've had examples before where we've had pre-scrutiny, been very successful. And the one that comes to mind is obviously when we looked at bringing back the leisure centres in-house. You know, that went to scrutiny well before the decision was made. Sorry, it was a long time ago. Well, I don't know, was it 4 years ago or 5 years ago? So yeah, so you know, we did have an in-depth discussion and debate, and there were proposals that were subsequently amended because of the Oscar input. So you know, there is history in the borough of doing that type of thing. But I think the other important point is that is getting this stuff fixed in the calendar, because obviously members, they don't just attend cabinet meetings. I don't just attend this meeting. There's always meetings going on, with officers, committee groups, different behind the scenes. So we need to factor in the meetings, not just the these main commission and OS meetings, but also the pre-meetings, because there's no point having pre-meetings if relevant cabinet member and senior officers aren't available. But I mean, we had a good one. Well, I think we've had a couple of very successful pre-meetings in recent months, and actually, that's just reminded me that's where the Pellings issue came up, because the housing director was at the pre-meeting for this meeting. Informed us about that. So that they are worthwhile, and it's similar to planning, Richard, as you know, situation there. And I think, as we heard before, we talked about the delivery plan and the themes, and it will require our attention, especially over this next year, to get to grips with that. So I would have thought, I'm not the decision maker on this, comes back to the whips again, but, the terms of reference, whatever that they may be for this committee and commissions in the new calendar year, the themes, I think, will be prominent across all the commissions. But there's always room for issues as they crop up, because there's always something happening in Southwark that we can't plan for, and is unexpected. So there will always be that discretion for those type of come before Oscar. Yes, Councillor Bentley.
Hello. Thank you for coming. I wanted to ask, and I think it relates a bit to what Councillor Brown was saying. So we're on the same commission, which is a funny one, right? Local economy and education. It's a strange blend. And I think what we've done this year is to try and separate. But my understanding in terms of co-opted members, we do need kind of representatives of the parent governors on our commission. But we don't have, for example, representatives of the local businesses. And just trying to understand about how that fits into this. Because as much as we are, I think, maybe specialists in fields outside of our councillor roles, and obviously generalists in terms of the stuff that we deal with every day, there is a need for expertise. And I know we have that option to call people to give evidence, but just thinking about those kind of voices. And I think when we covered this before, it came back that we didn't need to have a representative of local businesses on the local economy. And I'm assuming that would be the case for other commissions, that you would look to call people in rather than have them sit on as co-opted members. And just thinking about how that's fed into it. Did that make sense?
It does. I mean, there is provision in the Constitution for the commissions to appoint co-opted members, non-voting co-opted members, to assist with work that they're looking at. We have had on the Education and Local Scrutiny Commission a business representative, which was identified through the bids. That was for the 1 year when I was looking at town centres, and that person did prove very useful to the process. But it's for the commissions and the committee to identify up front the work they're looking at and the additional resources they need. And so you could have someone, I don't know, appointed for one meeting, you could have someone appointed for the whole year if you consider that the theme you're looking at, that individual would provide valuable expertise to the commission in that process. So it is for the commissions to identify. It does require agreement from the chair and vice chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. Environment Scrutiny Commission engage what we want to consider experts in the field of environment. So it is for yourselves to decide what you need to work out in advance. Is the process for selecting that individual to be a member of the commission. And if you're satisfied that the process is kind of valid or makes sense, then it's for yourselves to stay in place.
So just to kind of clarify on that point, so if we did want to invite somebody, or if on the housing commission they want to invite somebody, it would have to be approved by this committee to do it. If it wasn't already in the
by the chair and the vice chair, so it wouldn't have to come to the actual committee itself. The way we've done it previously is by way of communication with the chair and vice chair, asking if they've got any objections. And so far, we've received any objections to the commission appointed.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, I think, it's playing it by ear, basically. Yeah. By statute, the only co-optees we have to this. So obviously they sit on the Education Commission as well. But yeah, I mean, over the years we've had all sorts of people sat on the housing, the consultation. We've had tenant reps and reps. So so there has been business representatives. So I think it is something that the chair and vice chair mentions. When they set the work program for the year, I think, perhaps they need somebody with some expertise. And, you could even do it meeting to meeting. You don't have to be, somebody in a particular, quite flexible. Sorry, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I've got a question about just the closing statement, compliance with the protocol, and the monitoring of compliance around it. I guess more broadly in relation to the reviewing of the protocol. So, is there a general timeline that the council typically works to in terms of and periodically reviewing protocols like this? What I wouldn't want is for this to just be another document that sits on a shelf that isn't referred to.
I mean, as part of the constitution and annual reporting process of the work of scrutiny, there is provision built in for chair to report on issues that have arisen throughout the year and things that he thinks ought to be changed as part of issues that have come up throughout the year. So, in anticipation for as part of that process, as issues arise, if we find that the protocol isn't actually working as intended, or cabinet members are not taking part in the way expected, or there are other issues that crop up, these things normally get fed back to me either by my officers or the chief officers. So we will be able to keep an eye on how well the actual scrutiny function is working with these procedures in place, and if it does warrant change, then that can be fed back as part of the annual reporting process to Council Assembly in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, it's suck it and see, really, see how we get along with it, and if there is something that's not working, then be brought to attention and ever since it's, and it's something that we change and alter and amend as we see fit. So, as I say, there's always that flexibility. It's not hard and fast, but the key thing is to have this in place. I can assure you, this isn't going to lie on anybody's in tray or shelf. This is a living, active, working document. Make sure that it's full. The comments that you made on pre-scrutiny. Expand on that.
Can I just make a point of clarification, Chair? And
You're going to correct me?
No.
That's all right.
So, clarification, and it's in relation to the example given was the Education and Local Economy Scrutiny Commission. And what I'd just like to make clear is whilst it's a committee with the same membership, the subject matters are distinct. I mean, but the issue for keeping them together is because if you had an Education Commission and a Local Economy Commission, then you would need 2 sets of members, 2 sets of meetings. So it is purely just a practical way of putting things together with those individuals looking at 2 different subject matters.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but do I recall that we've had joint commission meetings before? Sure, something in the back of my mind.
I believe there
telling me-
may have been maybe 1 or 2, but not in my.
No, I'm going back even further. So I'm sure there was definitely when they were committed, rather than. I'm sure that there was. So that's a possibility as well.
Sorry, what do you mean by joint meeting?
Well, rather than just one commission meeting, you'll have the 2 groups of members, the 2 commissions. So you and the Environment Commission will have a joint meeting to look at a particular topic.
Oh, so you mean, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
Okay, fine. Well, I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying it's an option.
Because clearly I'm really into this protocol. No, just to your point, Ian, about it being a living, breathing document, and I'm sure it won't just sit on a shelf, but is it something that you're going to refer to kind of in the opening of these meetings? I do think it's worth people being reminded that this exists and people can refer to it.
If you wish.
Might as well.
Yeah,
I think a few extra words won't hurt.
Fine.
Can I just mention one more thing, Chair? And that is around different ways of undertaking scrutiny. And one of the things that the Scrutiny Improvement Review identified is the different ways that scrutiny can be undertaken. There's been a desire to get away from this committee in some of the work that you're doing. So by identifying issues earlier, one of the things that you may wish to factor into your scrutiny process is how you're going to undertake scrutiny of particular issues. They don't necessarily have to be in this committee. And there is a small budget available to support different ways of work should members wish to pursue scrutiny.
Which is a segue into our next item, but the fact is that we can. We're just talking about on mind complaint.
The different ways of working.
That's right. Yes. So in the scrutiny review report that we get to complete, and it's the next 2 big things that we when up to the annual council is on about the involvement of the public, out to the public, so they do things differently in joining sister boroughs. So we have examples, have that here in Southwark. And then the other thing, I think there was getting away from this specific committee format. There was also talk of sort of must and finish groups. So you're looking at to go away and some of that to death back with recommendations and basis of report. So it's almost like a subgroup of. So that can be done as well, and even on the commission. So so those are things that we will. Anything else? Okay, so today we're not agreeing. You said we're coming back again.
No, Chair, please agree to adopt the protocol so I can put it in place.
Nearly got out of it. Okay. So we can agree to adopt protocols. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thanks. Great. Okay, so we're on to our final item, which I hope won't take too long, which is the work programme. I mean, the way we've already been discussing this, but our first meeting is 3rd of June. Yeah, okay. So we need to be establishing the work programme there. I know I say this every year, it sounds a bit dull, but whoever's going to be the new commission chairs, it may be people sat in this room, it may not be people in this room, but whoever the new chairs are and vice chairs, it would be good if they came to their first meetings with ideas on subjects and issues for the commission or us to look at over the next year. I mentioned about the delivery plan themes. I think are going to be an important part of what we do, either on this committee, the commissions, and the other caveat I have to put in is obviously we sometimes I think we've gone off piste a little bit, talking generally, from our terms of reference. So I think we need to refer more to our terms of reference, constitutionally sound and correct. So when those are produced for the annual, urge you all to look at them and to see, what areas that each specifically honing in on as regards the council services, and then basically issues and subjects around that. Okay, is there any questions? Can we just note this? Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming. Good night.